Welcome to the Claws Out podcast. This is West Tigers TV coming to you live from the mic'd up studio here in Parramatta. We've got Rob and Gary in the house, and I'm joined also by Coach Adel on screen. He's going to be telling us in a minute how we beat the Eels on Easter Monday, how we break them down. But first off, Rob, 3 shows in 48 hours. I know the West Tigers have got a long turnaround, but it's a short turnaround for the podcast team.
Mate, Gary and I would do it 24/7 as long as we're winning every game.
What are you talking about? You've done like 2 pods all season.
I was just going to complain. I said I've done 3 pods in 48 hours, but you've been doing this all round, Gary. How did you do it?
Mate, it's hard, mate. You need to learn it.
Exactly. Coach, speaking of long and short turnarounds, I imagine we spoke last week about preparation against the Warriors and the importance of that. I imagine these things are planned a long term in advance. If you've got a 5 or 6 day turnaround, or in this case, a 10-day turnaround, just map out what you think the West Tigers training week would have looked like, given they probably got back from New Zealand on Saturday, I imagine.
I guess what they potentially would have done was they would have treated it like a Saturday night game, take away the 1 day of travel back from New Zealand, and just went to sort of regular programming, I guess you can call it. The only adjustment is probably the fact that we have to play next Monday. So it all depends on what the performance staff and whatnot wanted to see. I'd say captain's run will be Sunday morning. I reckon they give him the Saturday off. They may have given him some days off early in the week. I don't know whether Rob or I think Steve's still overseas. Rob, did you go down on Monday?
I didn't go down Monday because Steve was still in New Zealand.
Yeah, so it could be that they just give him a few days off. So Sunday, Mondays, almost turn your Tuesdays into your Mondays and turn a Monday into a Sunday, if you know what I mean, moving forward.
And very different background this week, mate. Last week you came to us from the car in South Logan Magpies training in the full kit. This week it looks like, I don't know if that's your art studio or your lounge room, but I can see that very impressive tiger in the background. Talk to me about that.
It's actually our secondary office that we have here at work, and that was by complete accident. There's actually, this one's black and white. There's actually another one on the other side of the wall in colour. So maybe this will have to turn into the Claws Out studio in Brisbane.
I notice there's no magpie on that tiger anywhere in the picture, Rob. No
comment should there be
that.
As well.
Okay, fair enough. We are going to put the teams on the screen in the next 5 or 10 minutes, but before we get to that, just a little bit about the history between these two clubs, Gary. 31 wins for Parramatta, only 19 wins for the West Tigers, 1 draw. I know we've only got a winning record against 2 clubs, but that seems Parramatta have had their struggles as well. That seems like a poor record.
Yeah, but you look over the last 5 to 10 years, Parramatta's been a fairly consistent side, better than us. So I'm not that surprised by those stats. And they have a team that historically, the way they play really troubles us. They have big forwards that like to play through the middle, and they're teams that have bothered us for pretty much our entire existence.
Is it a bitter rivalry, Rob, or it's just the fact the clubs are in close proximity? I mean, you go back to the merger in 2000 and Parramatta obviously wanted to merge with Balmain. I don't know if that lingers still, but it's still a big rivalry.
Certainly a big rivalry. Definitely that affected it initially. I think in latter days it was more about Mitchell Moses, and it seemed like he'd put down his tools the last few games when he played for the West Tigers and wanting to go to Parramatta. So there's just always been a little bit of bad blood there. But, again, there's not many teams we like in the comp, are there, Eddie?
No, 100%. Coach, all games are worth 2 points, but if you had to rate it on a rivalry scale, would they be the team you most like to beat, or is it the Bulldogs? Who are the West Tigers' main rivals?
Well, let me say it to you this way from my perspective, Eddie. That we've currently got 17 teams in the NRL. If 16 clubs offered me a job, I'd take it. If Parramatta offered me a job, I'd never take it.
Never take it. There you go. Little bit of history before we move on, Gary, or anyone can jump in here. Of the 51 games, I said there's been 1 draw. I don't want to turn into Yachty, but can anyone remember that draw? I'll give you a clue. It was in the first game between the 2 clubs in 2000 at Leichhardt Oval. It was 14 points all, and I remember I was at the game. Joel Kane actually kicked a penalty goal after time expired to level the scores. No golden point back then. So that was the only draw between the 2 sides. But Easter Monday, Coach, it's a big occasion. I think, AFL did this really well in the past, and Rugby League have sort of done it the last 10 years, these standalone occasions. Obviously, there's Anzac Day, there's Good Friday, there's Queen's or King's birthday, holiday games. But to have our own standalone game, I know it's only worth the same 2 points, but it's big.
Yeah, to be honest, it doesn't make sense to me that we play it at CommBank every single year, like for both clubs. And you'd like to think that from a marquee standpoint from the NRLs, we've played Parramatta in times where both clubs were actually struggling and the game was getting 50,000 people. So it doesn't make sense to me why the game is played at CommBank. I could only imagine if both the teams were, high flying and whatnot, what sort of crowd we'd be able to get there. So I think the game, first of all, should be played at a core. I feel like we do lift for the Easter Monday games in the past, where there's been times where we haven't had so much a great team and things aren't going well for us. We do lift for those games. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's always a special occasion because, if you live in another state like I do, you make the trip down to Sydney for the game.
Coach makes a good point there. I mean, 26,000 is the lowest crowd they've got for an Easter Monday game, but obviously it can't go past 30,000 because that's all Bankwest holds. I imagine if this game was at Homebush, it might get 50,000.
It needs to be at Homebush. There was a period there where I think both clubs were letting patrons from the Easter show come in for free, and I've been there when there was almost 60,000. Tigers actually won that day that I did go. I don't understand why they can't split the gates or just alternate years. Each club gets the gates.
50,000 for the first game back in 2014. That was the debut of the Easter Monday game. But, Gary, our record in it is fairly decent. Parramatta 6 wins, West Tigers 5 wins, considering our struggles over the last 10 or 11 years. And 7 of the 11 games have been decided by 10 points or less.
Yeah, I think as Adel said a moment ago, it's a game we live for. It's an event game, and it's like the Good Friday game. It's like the Anzac Day game. They're just event games, and I think you get in front of a big crowd, you get in front of that atmosphere, and you want to perform no matter how your season's going. So I think that's probably why we tend to show up for these games.
Last year's Easter Monday game, Coach, wasn't a memorable one. Obviously, it was a big dramas during the week with Lachie Galvin being demoted to New South Wales Cup. I think a lot of Tigers fans went into that game cautiously optimistic that this team would respond, but it was almost like we didn't quite handle the occasion. We sort of played very emotional that day, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, there are reasons potentially, not so much excuses. I think from my perspective that day, just Parramatta beat us to the jump. Even though I think we scored first in that game, I'm pretty sure Terrell scored first in that game that day. But maybe a little bit of complacency from us. But you just got to take your hat off to Parramatta as much as we don't like them. I think on that day they just got the bickies over us.
We did get the win in round 2, though, Gary, 32 points to 6 against them.
Yeah, we tend to play a lot of games there now at CommBank, so you're going to get one of them most years where we perform quite well. It was great to get that win in round 2 last year. Hopefully we get the one this weekend.
Adel, can I just ask you please to turn down the volume on your speakers? We're getting an echo through the show, unfortunately.
Last trivia one while we're sorting that out, boys. I promise I'm not going to... but we've won 3 games essentially by field goals in the Easter Monday games, 2 by a point. 1 was by 3 points because we got a penalty goal after the siren. Who kicked those field goals for us?
Jackson Hastings.
That was 1 in 2022.
Pat Richards?
Wasn't Pat Richards. He kicked the penalty goal to win it, but there was a field goal in that game in 2014.
Luke Brooks?
Luke Brooks. And there was 1 in 2024, another left-foot kicker.
That would have been, well, wasn't it Luke Brooks again? Oh, that was against Souths.
That was Souths the following week.
2022 was Hastings.
Left foot kicker.
He only played for us for 1 year.
Caesar.
Aiden Caesar kicked the field goal in 2024.
Oh, he did too.
Let's get the West Tigers team up on the screen. It was announced just over an hour ago, 4 o'clock Tuesday. I guess no surprises. It is unchanged from last week. You can see Jareen Buller at fullback. Tavana, who was a late inclusion last week, is with Lily on the wings. Makasini and Taruva in the centres. Same halves combination after they had outstanding games last week. Jock Madden and Adam Dewey. The forward pack remains unchanged. Terrell May, Coruscant, Pole, Samuel Afinu, Kai Pearce-Paul and Alex Twal. And I won't read out the whole bench, but the 6-man bench is there. Gary, any surprises there that it's unchanged?
No, after the performance that they put on against the Warriors, I wouldn't expect a change, and I'm quite happy with the side we're running out with.
Same, Rob?
No surprise, but very happy to see Afoa in place of Hope, and more the fact that Hope's not there, and I believe Latu Fainu can cover hooker, the halves, and ball playing 13 if need be.
Spoke about the long turnaround a minute ago, Coach. Is that almost too long a turnaround, or is it just an advantage the longer you get from an away trip to New Zealand?
Yeah, it probably works well for us that we've played in New Zealand because it helps in regards to the recovery time. Look, any turnaround realistically is about how you handle it, and performance staffs and and the coaching staff, that's their job to make sure they can nail that sort of preparation, to make it as regular as it can be or as familiar as it can be for the players. They'll plan. Game days are usually planned from the game day backwards, so they'll figure that out.
Spoke about, Gary, dealing with success. It hasn't been a strength of ours over the past couple of years. I know we're not favourites in this game, but coming off a win, we haven't often produced our best. I think it's probably ingrained in sides like Penrith or Melbourne where they have a win and they just go back to the drawing board. But this is something I think this side's still got to prove.
Yeah, I think historically our side, because we don't win a lot of games and we go on a lot of losing streaks, when we do get that game, it's usually releasing a little bit of pressure on the club. And I think the entire club relaxes a little bit. The fan base relaxes a little bit. And I think the players relax a little bit going into that next game. So that's why I don't think we've learnt how to perform back to back to back. And if we're going to be a top 8 side, being able to show up each week and perform each week is really crucial for us.
I could sort of see it in their demeanour last week, Benji and Appy Coruscant. Like Gary said, usually after a win, certainly the fans exhale and relax. But I've seen Benji and Appy sort of more chirpy and jovial after a press conference, whereas last week against the Warriors, even though it was such a big upset win, it was almost like this is what we expected to do.
Well, they went down 3 days early to execute a job, and they did it. And the good thing is, Eddie, that Benji keeps saying that we're a different team this year. So I don't think we should have the stigma of saying, we'll get overconfident. I don't think the boys will be overconfident, and that doesn't mean we're going to win or we're going to lose. I just think what we're doing as a team is playing that moment that's in front of us. We're not getting too far ahead of ourselves. I'm sure the boys will actually love the fact that we're underdogs. Okay, that's really pissed me off today, to be honest. And I can see, I know why Para can score a lot of points, and they're at home, and we haven't had a great record there. But still, I just think the boys will show up. They'll prepare as they are all year, and we'll just go out and have a go.
Coach, numbers 1 to 5, what's their biggest task this week? You spoke about how good they were on tackles 1, 2 and 3 coming out of yardage last week, but they'll certainly be challenged defensively because Makasini, Madden and Luke Lalili had their challenges last week.
Yeah, I mean, Parramatta love to play that wide shape, and it's something that I think will actually suit us because it's coming from a wider area where inside help can come. The one thing I think the outside backs need to do a little bit better this week, because it will be coming, because Moses is so good with his kicking game and so is Pezzett, is I think Parramatta are going to look to score points off kicks. So I think we need to be alert to that. I think they know by default, because of some of the changes, especially with Iongi out of their back line, that probably the kick is going to be the play a little bit. And we've probably seen the first couple of weeks that our boys defend a lot better when they're aggressive and they're coming, they're jamming in. So I think that's something Parramatta will identify, and it just means we've just got to be really alert to those kicks in behind, but also those tackle 5 kicks to our wingers, which, to be fair, we haven't seen much of it from Tino yet. The Warriors didn't put much pressure on him in an attacking sense last week, but it's one of the parts of our game that we probably haven't been great in to start the year in those small moments. So I think we just got to be better there. Gary, anything you'd like to see from our outside backs different to last week?
Yeah, I think Adel nailed it there where he's talking about the shape that's going to be thrown. Parramatta is shape all day of the week. So the play's going to be coming in their direction constantly. And that poor defence at the start of that game last week, we can't afford slip-ups like that. So I think it's crucial that they're on the game this week.
Rob, outside backs?
Yeah, that's going to be a big problem for us. Parramatta have scored 16 tries this year. 14 of them have come from inside the red zone. They actually found Penrith out a couple of times on Penrith's left edge last week, which has been a bit of a weakness for us. Further to that, Tuolangi's scored a couple of tries, particularly against Brisbane, running at the smaller guys. So given that Laban ran over Jock Madden, I'd expect Tuolangi to be targeting Madden. And I agree with Adel about the kick. The kick, if we jam up too quickly, they're smart enough to put kicks behind us. They did one last week for Josh Adokar, who scored a try against Penrith as well. So there's plenty to watch, and I am concerned about their game. And the one thing with Parramatta is they can score points. I mean, they're averaging just under 24 points a game. The problem is Parramatta are conceding 38 points a game. So we're going to need to score points because they certainly will score points.
Coach, what sort of game plan would you be devising? Obviously, last week, going over to New Zealand, 6 o'clock kickoff, greasy conditions over there. We kicked early. We defended in numbers. Preparing for a day game at Combank, how much different is that?
Yeah, it definitely is different preparing a day game anywhere, I guess. The plan for me is very simple. They're 12 and 11. Kitty Katonga, whatever his name is, and
Tuolangi,
Kilma Tuolangi. They are guys that don't have second efforts. They don't like to work hard. And then when they have to have effort on effort coming their way defensively, they struggle. So I think for us, blokes like Adam, Jock, Jareen, and both our back rowers, we've got to pepper those edges. Right along that 20-metre tram line is where I want to see a lot of the football being carried. So those guys are having to do a lot of work. And off the back of that, there's going to be some really good results for us, I reckon.
Gary, the forward pack, it's been a strength of ours this year through 3 weeks, and you'd look at it on paper, you'd think they've got the advantage here over Parramatta.
Oh, 100%. And I don't think we've really been able to say that against Parramatta before. Parramatta's a side that's quite often rolled through the middle of our packs, but I'm really confident in that defensive effort they showed against the Warriors on Friday night. I think we can replicate that again and really control the middle of the field, and I think it's going to be crucial because Parramatta likes to play off a really nice go forward, and if we can control that middle, they don't get that.
Coach spoke about attacking with our defence, and I went back and had a look at a bit of the replay last week, and it was so impressive, those first few tackles. Is that maybe a case, like he spoke about, of the forwards being a little bit fresher because they're not making as many carries, some of our outside backs doing the carries, or just a mentality?
Probably a mentality, but perhaps that's the case. What I do like is, having watched the Parramatta game against Penrith on Saturday, Parramatta's line speed was awful, and you could see that. They got tired. So if you can just get them despondent and playing from their end a little bit more, and obviously our wingers can diffuse, the long kicks and the high kicks, Parramatta's going to have a problem. Like I said, unless they get in the red zone, they scored 2 long-range tries this year. One of them was from a drop ball that Adel ran away and scored from. So we need to keep them in their end of the field. We've also got to watch the hooker, Smith. He's always offside from dummy half. He puts a lot of pressure on the kickers. I wouldn't want Jock, if he's doing the kicking, to stand too deep. I'd like him to sort of be on the move forward near the advantage line, taking the ball and putting that kick in, because Smith is a really annoying, and there will be times that Madden might not be able to get a good kick away.
Mentioned Parramatta's defensive record, Coach. Someone like Api Coruscant, will he be targeting maybe some of those lazy or tired forwards, Junior Paulo in the middle or Tuolangi on the edge on the goal line?
Well, we've got to make them tired first, Eddie, don't we? Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure whether it was Rob or Gary talked about it. Well, I think it was Rob. We've got to make sure they're coming off their own line. We don't want to give them the ball in good attacking areas of the field. So if they're having to go set for set and there's a bit of a grind of the game, which we've shown that we're able to do, Rob was definitely talking about where they like to score a lot of points. If the game gets into a bit of a grind, that's where Uppy will come into the game. That's where Jareen will come into the game. That's where a lot of our good second phase play is going to come into the game. Less set starts, more ball in play, keep the ball moving, keep us going through that middle of the field with our outside back carries, and Uppy coming off the back of it. I think there's a lot of success for us coming this week.
Does he play 80 minutes, Gary? I mean, I was just thinking about if you get a hot day out there with a day game, different weather.
Well, I think the makeup of the bench, not having Hope there, even though I'm not a Hope fan, I think he's more likely to play 80 minutes. I'm not a big fan of Latu playing in that 9 role. So I expect Latu to come on and play a middle type role, or that lock forward type role he played last week. The big thing, I think, keeping that ball in play, as Adel was just saying, we've shown this year our fitness has gone to another level. I think we're a much fitter side than Parramatta, and I think we should be able to come over the top of them, even if it is a grind.
The 48-20 scoreline last week is really deceptive.
Flattered them?
Well, no, I don't think it did flatter. I know Penrith would have taken their foot off the accelerator a little bit, but if you actually watch that game, the first 5 minutes, Parramatta was winning the forcings back issue. It was just basically a piggyback penalty that got Penrith down the other end, and then Penrith went to work. But from 18-0, Parramatta had a real good little period. They had a try disallowed, then Adel scored a try. But more importantly, in the second half, Parramatta were camped on Penrith's line for 15 minutes. They did get one try. Moses dropped a ball. Moses threw a pretty loose pass. He had a shocking game, to be honest, Moses. And really, Penrith didn't get out of their end until the replacement fullback, Joash Papali'i, tried to save a ball that wasn't going to be a 40-20. And from that moment, Penrith pounced. And there was another moment too where Adel took an intercept and scored. He was called offside, and Penrith scored a converted try. So that's a 12-point swing. In the scheme of things, if a team can score 20 points against Penrith, whether they've put the queue in the rack or not, that is concern. Like, they can play footy, but they can also go with us in the forwards as well.
Coach, you spoke about maybe who to target on their edges. Our halves combination, Adam Dewey and Jock Mannon, both had outstanding games last week. Is there anything different you'd sort of like to see from them this week, or it's more of the same?
Well, no, because, as I said sort of on our review on Sunday night or our coaches report, I didn't think necessarily they did anything from an attack perspective that helped us other than Adam. So I just want to see our plan this week. I think we understood what our plan was against the Warriors last week, and that was basically to defend our middle of the field really well and take away their ruck speed. But like Rob said, you're not going to grow as much as I want to keep the game in a grind. It's inevitable that Parramatta is going to get those moments and points are going to come. So we've got to be able to execute in that attacking sense, especially early in the game. If we get some possession, I think we've got to get in front early. We've got to get in front, keep our foot on the throat, and keep playing football. Because I don't think at any stage any lead's going to be good enough. And even if in a stage where we are behind, we can still play football because I think Parramatta's there to leak some points as well. So this is going to be one of those games. It's like a boxing match with two heavyweights. There's haymakers coming, and you've got to be always ready to throw punches.
Adam didn't do any kicking last week. I imagine that was to do with the groin. You're expecting Jock to do most of the kicking duties?
Yeah, I like Jock's kicking game anyway. I think he has a really nice long kicking game. Quite a big boot for a guy who's not real big. So I do expect to see him do most of it, especially like Adam wasn't goal kicking either. I don't, whatever it is with that groin, I think is probably still going to be there. So I expect to see the same.
Rob, I wasn't going to mention this, but I might. I don't know if we can get the Tigers team back on the screen again, but I'm only going to mention it because Justin Horrow and Willie Mason were talking about it yesterday, and they went through the side, and Jock Madden and Alex Safer. What are they? What's the difference with those two? Come on, Rob.
They
were talking about the only two Aussies in the side, and they were being complimentary of how Benji's put this roster together and the growing leadership and the brotherhood within the squad. And he was talking about Jerome Luai, Appy Coruscant, the May brothers, Tito, and the energy he brings. And I just thought it was an interesting point because you look at the Polynesian influence on the NRL. I think it's over 50% now players. Benji's the only Polynesian coach, but it looks like he's built this squad and he's relating it to it so well, and maybe he's got the right mix there.
Well, I should have been aware of that because I saw a stat a few weeks ago that we're the only team that didn't have an Australian as a starter.
Well, if you take out Jock Madden,
well, he wasn't there.
Jerome Luai comes in ordinarily. I know, Coach, you've spoken about that. I think you spoke about it last year, and it's a tricky one to talk about because you can get into trouble if you talk about too many this or that. I need. But I think what Benji's done, bringing this squad together, some people would have raised their eyebrows, but the leadership in it is growing. And you mentioned the senior players last week driving standards. I think it's become apparent this year that the senior players are really taking control and lifting those young guys and journeymen along the way.
Well, we've got 4 premiership players in that side. I mean, Taylor, obviously he's not playing at the moment, Tito, Uppy and Jerome, they're winners. They're guys that have been in a winning system. So when you're recruiting players, Polynesian, Chinese, Asian, it doesn't really matter. I mean, what they're bred football-wise and how they're brought up and the systems they've played in has a much bigger influence. So, I mean, I'm not sure why that's even relevant because I have seen it, and I've seen it being quoted in a pretty derogatory way by people sometimes in reference to Benji and his team and the players that he's recruited. But I don't even know why it's even relevant, to be honest.
Coach is right, whatever the nationality or background, but you can see the connection within the squad. That's what I'm sort of getting at, watching those preseason things. I know every club does hard preseasons and boot camps and stuff like that, but there seems to be a want in the squad for everyone to do well, and they're happy for people's success, which is a key in a team environment.
Yeah, for me, that's all about building your culture in your club. It's about setting your standards in your club, having clear expectations of what you expect from players. And I think if you watch that preseason documentary, it's quite clear Benji and the leadership group were pushing those standards really high. And that's where we're fallen down in the past is we've had a close enough is good enough mentality and a lot of players who were happy to be first graders. We want players who aren't happy to be first graders. We want players who are looking to win the premiership. And I think that's where we've kind of fell down in the past. And by bringing in players who are premiership winners, by bringing in players who have been in systems with high standards, you gradually increase that. And Appy's not doing it by himself anymore.
Let's get the enemies team on the screen. Parramatta Eels, we take them on Monday. There it is. They have a big change at fullback, Rob. No Iongi out for 8 weeks with syndesmosis ankle injury. I think he's been playing some really good footy. He'll be a big miss for them.
He's been one of their best all year. I'm glad he's out, and that's no knock on Papali. Papali has got a lot of game about him. The thing with Papali, he's a lot of diamonds, but he's also a lot of rocks. So he's the sort of guy that we can force into error, and he's the sort of guy too that will chance his hand a little bit too much occasionally, and I think that could be to our benefit. Obviously, it comes off. He looks like a rock star. But yeah, the rest of their teams is pretty much the same. I mean, I know Dory's out, but he was coming from the bench. Yeah, and obviously, we've got some old players there. Both second rowers are ex-Tigers, and De Silva on the bench is an ex-Tiger. We've got to watch his running game from dummy half. I mean, that's pretty much all he's got, but he's bloody good at it.
How much game planning, coach, will go around the young fullback there? Do you think we'll target him with a high ball or trying to bully him early in the tackles?
Yeah, absolutely, we will. I think we will attack their edges and their back line, including their fullback, quite a bit. I'm actually tipping Macassini to have a massive game this week. I think that matchup against Sean Russell's a really good one for him. Rob and I have done a lot of shows and chats together. I'm so confident going into this week. I actually think we match up against them really, really well. I think the old Parramatta, where Brad Arthur was the coach, when they threw a lot of offloads, I think that we struggled with that sort of game. Whereas this sort of Parramatta, who plays a lot of good width football, actually probably suits what we've got at the moment. So, I'm really confident with this week.
Looking at their wingers and centres, Gary, Simonson, Kelly, Russell, Adel, there's plenty of pace there.
Yeah, and you see that by the fact that the only really long-range tries they've scored have been from mistakes. So if you make a mistake, they've got guys who can go the length and finish that off. But I think we've got them covered. I'm quite happy. I agree with Adel. I think Macassini will be strong this weekend. I also think that as we shift the ball wider through those second rows, I think we've got opportunities out wide.
They are that sort of side, not afraid to spin the ball in their own half. The guys got to be on their guard there.
And they don't back down either. They've come back. 2 of their wins have been from massive deficits. They were down 20-6 against the Broncos. They were down 14-6 against Saints. So as Adel said earlier, we can't take our foot off the gas if we are ahead. And they have got that game where they can rack up points really quickly. But I'm with Adel in terms of I think Macassini will have a big game. I also think Buller should be a benefactor off our 2 second rowers. I think the 2 second rowers should have enormous games. I noticed Saturday with Parramatta, whenever they were worried about the shift, their spacing got too wide, and then the big forwards for Penrith were scoring tries. So I think our forwards could have a little bit of success getting over the try line this week.
Penrith really did go through the middle of them in that match last weekend, and through the middle through the second rollers on the edges. That's where they made most of their ground. Most of their try scoring opportunities came through, and I think we need to be going with something similar.
And we haven't seen too much of the Kai Pearce-Paul offloading, which we know it's being encouraged. I think this week we'll get to see a lot more of it.
Coach, Rob mentioned their defensive record, 152 points in 4 games. That is a horror show, but they have played Penrith, Melbourne and Brisbane. Is it too early to sort of say, they're a front-running side, and if you get them under pressure, they'll fold, and they're a poor defensive side?
No, because they've got to play the Tigers again this week as well. So, I think your DNA is your DNA, and it doesn't matter who you're playing. And we've shown that if you can be tough and you can be resilient, you can resist opposition teams. Now, I'm not saying that that means you're going to win football games, but what we've been able to show is the fact that yes, we may lose a game of football like we did against South. All we're going to do is we're going to be tough, and when things aren't going our way, besides that first 10, 15 minutes, we showed a lot of toughness and we turned teams away. So, yeah, I think Parramatta, from their perspective, would be disappointed with that and their defence to start off the year. So potentially there's going to be an emphasis from their perspective. But like I said, foot on the throat, keep playing football at them this week. I don't think when you go across that side, you name those 4 guys from 2 to 5, you said there's a lot of speed. There's not much shoulders in the 4 defenders. So, I'm going to make them tackle all week or all game, sorry. And can I throw one more thing in for you, Eddie?
Go for it.
I want to let Samuela off the leash this week. I want him to go at Moses. I want him to go at him hard. Every time Moses complains, like sometimes the Warriors were doing last week, I want the boys to get in there. I want them to get in his face, really roll him up and get into his head, because I think that's something we can do really well this week.
You don't think that's a double-edged sword and that could fire him up? Because he often saves his best football for us. I don't want to talk about Mitchell Moses, but he often does.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's an issue. I think he's good when he's got all the guys and all the resources around him, especially when he's got his fullback there. But I don't think this week that's going to be the case. I think that, he's also had Dylan Brown with him in the past. He's a good running half. He's just got another 7, basically, that plays with him at the moment. I think we go after Moses this week. I think we go after him mentally, physically, and aggressively.
Adel, you spoke a moment ago about our ability to turn sides away this year, and historically that's something we've been really poor at. Do you see that as a change in defensive structures, or is it attitude? What are you putting that down to?
It has to be attitude, Gary. It can't be anything else. There must be some sort of commitment. I know Rob might be able to talk about it because he's, I know he's spoken about it at training. It just looks like there's a connection with the group. When there's a connection with the group, Rob, does it look like that at training where they just feel like they owe each other that commitment?
I'm not around that environment too much, Adele, but from what I saw, they look so connected, so happy. And further to that, if you just want to get X's and O's, we train with different combinations. We mix up our centres from right to left, our wingers from right to left to adapt for any situation in case there's injury. So, that's what – look, I got my confidence from the West Tigers pre-season, boys. I really didn't get it so much from having 2 wins out of 3. It was just speaking to Benji and seeing a different look on Benji's face and a confidence. Like, Benji's had to learn his craft. He got thrown in the deep end and he's finally got his head above water, and I think things are looking good. And in terms of people saying, don't get too cocky, you've won 2 out of 3 games, I'm not getting cocky, but I think, to be fair, as a fan, Eddie and Gary, Adele, I think we're allowed to have some hope and allowed to have some fun and allowed to say, you know what, I think we're going to win. And if we lose, it's not the end of the world. But we've been caged, muzzled Tigers for 15 years, and we've reaped negativity by the media. We read it on the socials all the time. I want our fans this is meant to be fun. Supporting your team is meant to be fun. So for people to say we're getting cocky or whatever, and I'm not buying grand final tickets or anything yet, but I tell you what, the sky's the limit for this team if they keep improving at the rate of knots that they've shown already this year.
Their halves coach. So obviously big signing in the off-season, a strange one. Jonah Pezzett only for 1 year, but I think he's going to be a really good player in time, going to Brisbane next year. His start of the season has been mixed. He had a magic sort of game against Brisbane. I think he set up 4 tries, but he's made some errors as well. He's got a very similar demeanour to Mitchell Moses. Very cocky, very loud, not afraid to shout for the ball. He's mainly been patrolling that left side of the field, but he does swing right occasionally. How do you best combat him? Do you go after him as well?
Yes and no, but like I said, to me it's Moses. He's always been the focus in that side. If he's not playing well, Parramatta won't play well. That day against the Broncos, I thought Pezzett did some good things, but it wasn't necessarily. It was a bit like Jock did last week, where he had hands in a lot of the action, but it wasn't necessarily him creating it for other people. They were just benefiting off the back of it. I think he's just a solid first grader, to be honest. I don't think there's anything more than that.
And the strengths of Moses' game, obviously he's got an outstanding, deep, long kicking game, but he likes to swing short sides a lot. He's one of the best short side players in the competition. They've got to be on their game for that.
Yeah, he does. But for me, his biggest strength is his running game. His ability to get one-on-one with a defender, either beat the defender or draw another player in and create space for his outside man. I think he's probably the best running half in the game, and if you give him space, he will hurt you. So it's really important that you don't give him that time and space.
Point of difference in the Parramatta team, I guess, in the style compared to what we play. They have a genuine ball player at lock in Dylan Walker. He's been coming off the bench most of last year, but I noticed he's starting at lock. That's one player that I think noticeably improved them last year when he joined them, I think, early in the season.
Yeah, I agree with you, Eddie. And I noticed in a couple of games he's actually started this year. He's starting again this week, and I think that's a plan from Riles to, get into the game straight away and show that shape straight away. Like Adele said last year, it looks pretty, but sometimes it doesn't work. My concern with Mitch Moses, which has nothing to do with X's and O's, is he never plays 2 bad games in a row. He was awful last week. You just got to say it. He was awful. His passing game was awful. I didn't think his kicking game was great. His goal kicking was awful. That doesn't happen very often. But, on Dylan Walker, look, I think he's a great addition. And when Dylan Walker was playing for Parramatta last year, I was saying, boy, I wish we had that at our club. And now it seems like Twoll and a few others are able to provide that role.
the forward pack overall of Parramatta, Coach? I know they've had a couple of ACL injuries. Hopgood was a big one for them, but I mean, Junior Polo, he's been a Goliath in the past for him, but is he? I don't want to say he's past his best because I don't want to tempt fate, but the weaknesses in this Parramatta forward pack?
Yeah, I mean, I've explained about the back rows a little bit earlier. I think physically we'll match these guys. But it's like anything. If you give them a bigger share of possession, they're not having to tackle as much. Well, every forward pack is going to have that little bit over you. I actually think Parramatta might flip this week. I think Walker may not start. I think watching us the last couple of weeks, I think that Riles will understand that our forward pack doesn't drop, especially when our interchange comes on. I have a feeling they may switch. They might even look at starting with Talon this week. I just feel like something's going to change from Parramatta this week. Listening to Riles' press conference last week, he was extremely disappointed. So I'd be surprised if the team they've named this week, or the 13 they've named, actually starts. I actually expect a few changes, to be honest.
Talon De Silva, another old boy. He did struggle at times for them last year. He had a good game against the Dragons a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, he's still up and down. It was interesting a couple of times last year. Mitchell Moses gave him a couple of rev-ups. So I think he'll be looking for a big game this week to show the Tigers what they lost when he left. So that running game around the middle of the field is really crucial for him. So just keeping an eye on that, and I think you keep him under control.
They were sort of everyone's pick, like darlings at the start of the year, top 8 pick, and there was a lot of praise for Jason Riles. I know it wound up Coach last year how much praise Jason Riles was getting. I think we did a short whose rebuild is on track. Who's got the better squad at the moment?
We do. Undoubtedly we do, and we're playing with a depleted back line with many players out of position. They are everyone's darling. Look, Jason Riles is a media darling, and look, to his credit, I mean, he's putting his sort of footprint on how he wants the team to play. But I think we're in a better position to make the finals, even if they beat us this week or not.
Coach, I'll ask you the same question I asked last week. Last 20 minutes before the boys go to kick off on Monday. What are the points you're re-emphasising?
Play for 80 minutes. Like I said before, using boxing terminology, it's going to be haymakers after haymakers this game. So every time they throw a punch at us or we throw a punch at them, we've got to expect to be able to follow it through with another punch from our end. Or if they throw one at us, we've got to be able to throw one back. So, I just think this week it's stay the course, play our 80 minutes, no matter what the scoreline looks like, whether we're ahead, they're ahead. The game is never going to be over this week. I agree with Rob completely. I just think there's points and we've got to stay in this for 80 minutes this week.
Lots of mood swings in the Parramatta games this year. That's one thing that, I mean, it's probably 6 again. It's common in a lot of games, but I think they were 16 down against Brisbane, ended up winning. I think they were 8 down against Georgia Illawarra, ended up winning. Melbourne, they get flogged. But like Coach said, even if you're 16 or 18 up, if you get a man sin bid or something, they can rattle off 3 or 4 tries.
Yeah, that's why there's wild swings in their games, is their ability to score points, and back it up time and again. They can put on 20 points in 15 minutes if you give them the opportunity. So
they can also league it, Gary, can't they?
Yeah, they can. Yeah. So it goes the other way as well, because their defence can be quite porous at times. So it's really, really important that we take advantage when we have the momentum, because it's going to swing. It swings in every game that we've pretty much watched this year. So taking advantage when we actually have the momentum, scoring points when we have the momentum, is going to be crucial this week, because Parramatta will score when they have it.
You don't mind a bet. I know the other 2 boys don't really, but on the rugby league. But 3.5 point start, you sounded a bit offended by that. You think the Tigers should be favourites?
I think we should be favourites. I'm offended in the fact that it makes me think that we're going to cop it somehow this week. It's almost, like sometimes you feel like it's scripted.
Ambushed by the referees.
Yeah, something like that. Just
conspiracy theories.
They get off to a fly.
Rob is always so positive, isn't he? Like, it's preempting referees.
No. Well, I'm just trying to. Well, maybe someone gets to them and it works in reverse psychology. I think we need at least 30 points this week. And so we have to find points, but I think the points are going to come from where you don't expect so much. I think the big guys are going to be Appy, it's going to be Buller, it's going to be the 2 second rowers, and to a lesser degree, Macassini.
All right, well, it's 4 o'clock kickoff on Monday, and Coach, you're going to be joining us in the studio afterwards, as far as I know. We're going to have 2 shows, obviously Claws Out and the Coach's Report, so I don't know how we're going to deal with the emotions of the game. Hopefully it's a win, but you might get Grumpy Rob or Grumpy Eddie or Negative Eddie.
You get Grumpy
Well, can I
Rob
just
every
make
day.
it Grumpy Rob for a second? We got Peter Goff on Monday, Rob.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, look, let's
But
be
no,
honest,
mate,
mate. If you'd have named, if any ref you named, I wouldn't have been happy with. So let's be real about that. But yeah,
I used to like Matt Checken. Matt Checken was my favourite ref.
Chicken legs chicken.
that's because he was a Balmain
Well, I
junior
played
ref.
around-
Mate,
I thought you were going to
around
say
the
someone
golf-
else then.
It's a strange
played around
individual
the
that
golf
had.
ones.
It's a strange individual that has a favourite ref.
Who, myself?
Yeah,
Tim Mander was a
Tim
good
Mander,
ref.
that's the
Woohoo!
one.
Look, also while we're there, shout out to our former general manager of football, Matt Betty, who's actually now the head of football operations for
the referees.
officiating for the NRL now. So
Is that why we're going to get a better go
any
this
complaints? Any complaints? Don't worry, I'll flick him a text and say, mate, come on, sort it out.
year? All right. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Coach. Obviously, a big week coming up for the West Tigers. Big thank you to all our viewers on West Tigers TV. Keep an eye out, Rob, because Josh and the boys will be out for West Tigers Life tomorrow night.
Yeah, should be a big show tomorrow night. Riff is joining us out here from Florida, so that'll be great. Shane should be back from hanging out with the lady boys in Thailand. And Josh has got
Big
a great
shout out,
show
Shane.
lined up. You never know. If there's a fourth microphone, I might even jump on as well.
There you go. Go the West Tigers.